Okay, let's get to work. It's nice to be in here. It's nice to be warm. It's nice to be with you. It's nice to be in a community of faith. I realized as I climbed into bed last night, because I'm all over the place and all different kinds of circles of people, it is good to be in the presence of our brother Jesuits and our sisters and brothers in this community. We are poised at a very historic time here in California. And I want to talk about catching on fire, and I want to talk about casting that fire out to warm and to change and to set ablaze human rights here in California, because we are poised for a ballot initiative in which the people are going to end the death penalty in California, and we are poised to end it. If the wave is about to hit the shore, but I want to talk about each of us in our conscience, in our heart, in our spirit, catching on fire. St. Basil, back in the 4th century, said, "Annunciations are frequent, but incarnations are rare." You know how the angel Gabriel announced to Mary to be the mother of Jesus, and she said yes, and so Jesus was brought into the world. We make Christ visible in the world. We're the hands, we're the heart, we're the eyes. We, where there's not life, we bring the life. Where there's death, we bring life. This is us. It's about us coming alive. It's interesting. In Aramaic, there was no word for Savior. Jesus never thought of himself, talked about himself as a Savior. But he kept talking about life, about being alive, about fullness of life, about really living. There was graffiti on the wall of Northern Ireland that said, "Is there life before death?" And for California to be a life state, we have to end the killing of human beings in our names. Your name's been on the gurney every time a human being is killed. Our names are on it. But I want to share with you, one of the most precious things we can share with each other is our interiority, or the life we have inside, the consciousness we have inside, the love we have inside. We only communicate that to each other through self-revelation, and I want to share my journey with you, at least the high points of the journey of waking up. Because so much of the spiritual life is about illumination or about waking up. Until we wake up, we don't act. And the waking up for me in the gospel was about waking up to this important part, integral part of the gospel, that being a follower of Jesus or following the way of Jesus or being a Christian is to be on the side of those who have no voice, to be on the side of poor people, to be on the side of people who are marginated and oppressed. Now, I grew up in a good Catholic family, and I was loving to people, but I always thought that what the gospel meant was, well, you're kind to everybody like in your own little tidal pool around you, you know? You're nice to your family, you're nice to people who go to your church, nice people who are at your school, nice people who are at work, nice people in the neighborhood. And as long as we were loving and charitable, that charity really was what it was about. And Thanksgiving time comes, and you bring your canned goods and your stuff in a basket, all of which is good, because we can't live without charity to each other. But I didn't get it about justice. And we get into the little Jesuit discernment thing here that Ignatius of Loyola taught us, that when the Spirit of God is moving in us, when we're on the path where God wants us to be, when we're in alignment with the energy and love and will of God, there's peace. Now, might get tired, but we're peaceful. We're in harmony. When God's trying to move us out of our groove, then you know that story, the angel stirring that water in the pool. The water starts stirring, and there's a certain amount of turbulence. There's not a peace. And boy, that was me with my community, the Sisters of St. Joseph, when we started having these debates about social justice and charity and what were we called to do as nuns. My whole life I'd been in the suburbs. My whole life I'd been with other people just like me. We had a roiling inner city in New Orleans. I mean, when Katrina hit, there were 150,000 people left to drown in that city because over half the city is poor and struggling African Americans, patterned all across the United States. The inner city becomes increasingly people of color and poor, and white folks head out for the suburbs. It happens everywhere, and I was one of the little suburbians, and I was with people and loving it. I believe everyone is worthy of our service and our love. But this was starting in the community that as nuns we needed to be more involved with social justice. And I was on the side of the spiritual sisters who said, well, as long as the poor have God, they have everything. Even Jesus had said, the poor you'll always have with you. Not by bread alone do people live. But of course, I didn't even know any people in the inner city of New Orleans, my very own city. Our inner cities and our areas of poverty could be in India. So separated are we from each other. Kind of like the little girl at Time who wrote this essay called The Poor Family. And she said once it was a very poor family. The mother was poor, the father was poor, the children were poor, the butler was poor, the chauffeur was poor. The whole family was poor. And I could have written the essay. But I was defensive and I was argumentative. And you know how you know you really roiled up about something is after the debates were over at the community and I'm back home and I'm in the shower and I'm still doing the debate. Well, when she said this, I should have said that. And if I had said that, then that would have done that. Spinning, spinning, spinning. Now looking back, it's because there was about to be a move made in my life. And I was resisting it because it was going to cause a lot of changes. Always when we look back on the movement of grace in our life, there's disturbance when we're not where God's calling us to be. Sometimes it's a feeling like of a balloon hitting a ceiling. I know I'm doing good stuff. I know that my life is not about bad things, that I'm about good things, but there's something more. There's something more, and I don't know what it is. And then we all went to a conference in Terre Haute, Indiana. It's the first part of the book of Dead Man Walking. And this beautiful, wonderful sister, Maria Augusta Neal, I wasn't happy that we were going to be with her for 3 days because she was one of those social justice people. And we were all imprisoned in the dormitory at Terre Haute, Indiana, and there was no escape. And on the second day, she changed the spiritual trajectory of my life because I heard about Jesus in a way I had never heard before. And when she had announced after the first day that she was going to be talking about Jesus, about following Christ, I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. I slept real good the night before because I thought, Jesus, I know some stuff about Jesus. I mean, I had made the spiritual exercises for 30 days, quiet, probably nearly drove the Trinity crazy. They were probably counting the days. And here's what she said. It was one line, but I was awake to the grace then. Ready? Jesus preached good news to the poor. I thought, I mean, I knew what was coming next. Integral to the good news to the poor, how every hair of our head is numbered, how even if a sparrow falls to the ground, God knows and God notices everything that happens to us, the love of God for us, all of which is true. But what she said was integral to the good news that Jesus preached to the poor was that they would be poor no longer. And what got Jesus killed, it wasn't just that a nice man went around and preached to people and healed sick people. It's the radical new kind of community he inaugurated, where everyone was treated with respect and no one was in need. We are at a precipice in this country in terms of awareness. There are 400 people in this country that have as much net income as half of the population in the United States. And the Occupy that we see cropping up around us, it's because of the huge disparity in resources that are given in this country. And when you hear, and you're going to be shocked, how much California spends on its machinery of death, the shocking amount of money used for death in a culture of death instead of in life, it is going to shock you. You're going to go, how can this be that in the first 13 executions in this country where they spent $308 million, how can that be, that exorbitant amount of resources going into death? And you're going to learn how it is. You're going to learn about the complex legal system. You're going to learn about how when you build a death row in a prison, it's 4, 6, 8, 10 times more expensive to kill, for killing. And executions happen here on an average every 20 years. I just read in the Atlantic Monthly or the New York Times that some people are hoping to get a death penalty. It means they'll have their own cell. And if they got a good lawyer, they can get them a TV, because they know the chances of their being executed in this state are very rare. And it's better than just going into population. How did this happen to us? Well, my first awareness was it happens to poor people. Mine was that Jesus was on the side of the poor, and I didn't even know people in my own inner city in New Orleans. And when I woke up and I knew that following Jesus meant to be on the side of the poor, the first part of the journey was to move in with 4 other sisters. They were already there. I was the one who woke up late. And that's a great thing about waking up to justice. We find when we go there are already people there. They woke up ahead of us. And we stand on each other's shoulders. And Sister Laurie Schaff was there at Hope House in the St. Thomas Housing Projects, and says to me when I move in, Helen, you don't have to have in your back pocket a blueprint of how you're going to do away with poverty. Just be neighbor to the people and sit at their feet and hear their stories and learn what it's like to be poor and African American in New Orleans, Louisiana. And learn. And then, as you get it, then join with them in their struggle for justice. And that's what I did. It was like I'd gone to another America. Waking up. I was so glad to be awake. I'm still glad to be awake. Illumination and waking up is always grace. We can't make ourselves be illumined. We can't make ourselves wake up. But you know what the important thing is? Doesn't matter when we wake up. It's that right away we begin to act. Right away, soon. Life is about flow. Today, and I'm going to take you through this death penalty thing and how it works and what happens with the victim's family and everything I've learned. What's important is that when the spark is kindled and we're illumined, right away, as soon as we can, as simple as the act is, to act. Because then it flows through us. If we don't act, there's a kind of paralysis. There's a kind of way we build it up in our mind like, oh, it's so overwhelming, I don't know what thing to do first. There are so many needs. And we can get caught in ourselves and we never act. To flow, to act. So St. Thomas became my second formation in the Christian life of my African-American neighbors who, when I had grown up as a young girl in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, my daddy was a successful lawyer. We lived in a big house. The only way I knew African-American people were as our servants, and I didn't even know Ellen's last name, who worked with Mom in the house, and Jesse, who worked in the yard. And Mom and Daddy were always kind. Like Daddy helped Jesse get a house and buy property and get a good job. Always kind, but never questioned the systemic practice of oppression through segregation that was going on in Louisiana. Even in Sacred Heart Church, black people had to sit over in a special section, and when we had Holy Communion, black people came to communion last. I never questioned it because I wasn't thinking in terms of justice and how systems work and what it means to human beings to be caught in that. Now my teachers are African American people. And it's while I'm in that soil at Hope House that coming out of the Adult Learning Center one day, a friend of mine who worked in the Louisiana Coalition office for prisons meets me on St. Andrew Street, has a clipboard, has a project going on, bumps into me, says, "Hey, Sister Helen, you want to be a pen pal to somebody on death row?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I could do that. I'm an English major. I could write some good letters." This is Exhibit A of the Sneakiness of God, Part 1. Because we hadn't executed anybody in Louisiana in over 20 years, I think I'm only going to be writing letters to this person. I'm learning about social justice from A to Izzy. So here's somebody on death row, write a few letters, which I did, and he wrote back. That's where the problem started. The man wrote back. Because the way the gospel happens is when there's encounter between two people, not just studying systems, but here's a man, he writes back. And then I realized from his letters, he actually never asked me to come. He never asked me for anything. He was just glad someone had found him and that he was not alone and that I was praying for him. I could tell from his letters that no one was coming to see him, that it was impossible for his mother, that he had nothing. And it was silent, but it was his humanness. It was his aloneness. And then when I'm meditating one morning on this Matthew 25, which I almost knew by heart, I was hungry, you gave me to eat. I was thirsty. We've been through that today, this very day in the gospel. And I come to the words, I was in prison and you came to me. And I thought, I'll go see him. I'll go visit him. And so I wrote, and I said, Patrick, I'll come see you. And I mean, in return mail, so excited. And you fill out the visitor form. And he says, I'm a Catholic, you're a nun, you'll be my spiritual advisor. I'll fill in the form. Little knowing that about 2 years later, first there would be the letters, and then there would be the visit, and then 2 years later, he is going to be killed by the state of Louisiana in the electric chair at midnight in the early morning hours of April the 5th, 1984. And at 5:45 in the evening, everybody is going to have to leave the death house except the spiritual advisor who can be with him to the end and will be with him at the end, who will be me. And the way grace works is if I had known then, oh yeah, you're going to write some letters, then you're going to visit the guy, then he's going to be killed with electricity. You're going to be there. He's going to be looking at your face when this happens. You're going to come out of that execution chamber that night. You're going to throw up. It's in the middle of the night, and your whole life is going to be changed. I couldn't have done it. But grace comes up inside us as we need grace, not ahead of time. Even in that death house, as we're counting down the days, he's got 3 days to live, 2 days to live, 1 day to live. This very day, now we have the morning, now we have the afternoon. If I anticipated in my mind, oh my goodness, this is the last day, we're going to move into the afternoon, they're going to come at midnight, I would come unraveled inside. The only private place I had in the execution in the death house was the women's room, and I'd go in there to pray. And if you see the movie of Dead Man Walking, you see Susan Sarandon go in there, and the prayer it was a selfish prayer. It was like, please, God, don't let him fall apart. I'm hanging by a thread. Please, emotionally, don't let him come unravel, because if he comes unravel, I'll come unravel. Please hold him up. Please hold him together. That was my prayer. And accompanying him in this, the weirdest, most surreal thing, as Susan kept saying as we were doing the film of Dead Man Walking, this is so surreal, and that's the only word for it. It's not like being with somebody in a hospital who's fading and dying. It's with somebody who's fully alive. And you're talking as you've been doing over the 2 years. And the only way you know they're going to die is with your mind and your watch, and then trying to get a hold of that. How can you be talking with someone who's so alive, and in a few hours now he is going to be a corpse, and they're going to put him in a body bag, and the hearse is going to drive up? I was just with students from a Catholic high school in Cincinnati, and we stood outside for vigil as Ohio killed Reginald Brooks. And Sister Alice Gerdeman is there with us and showing the students. Now you're going to see the hearse drive up here. Then you're going to see the hearse go through that sally port. See way over there where those steps are? Well, that's a killing. That's where they're going to kill him. And then you'll see the hearse go up. And then the hearse will come out with his body. And all the kids, high school boys, are looking at this, and you're trying to get your mind around this, of what's going to go on in that building. And even when you're there, it's so hard to get your mind around this taking of life. When we descend into the issue of the death penalty, there's a reason why this moral issue is harder for us than other issues where we're pro-life of innocent life. We're not talking most of the time about innocent life. We're talking about people who have done unspeakable crimes. And so as I got to know the man, Patrick Saunier, and as I got to know his brother, Eddie Saunier, who was serving 2 life sentences in the Louisiana State Prison, it wasn't long before I descended into the crime. And I was over at the Prison Coalition office, and I had asked to have background information on the case. I wanted to learn. I wanted to know. I didn't want to be naive. And I waited until Patrick trusted me enough. I waited till Eddie trusted me enough, because you got to really trust somebody to entrust over to them the worst thing that we've ever done in our life. But I didn't want to be naive. I'm over in the Prison Coalition office. They take out all the files. And I know Patrick by now. I know Eddie. I've looked into their faces. And I look now into the faces of 2 beautiful, innocent teenage kids who had gone to a Catholic high homecoming football game on a Friday night in November. Early in the month was the anniversary of their deaths, which the family went through again, and the killings happened in 1977. A boy, a young man by the name of David LeBlanc, with his brown, curly hair, and a young woman, Loretta Bork, 18, David, 17, and there's their picture in this little town of New Iberia, where Cajun people live in Louisiana. And then next to their smiling photo is a big headline in bold letters, "Teenagers Found Murdered." And then to my horror, as I read the story, here's Patrick Saunier, here's Eddie Saunier, these 2 brothers that would go to this lover's lane out by an abandoned sugarcane field. And they had done this with other couples, none of whom had been killed, but some of the young women had been raped. And the 2 brothers approach in the car, and the kids look out of the window of their parked car with no one around to help them, and see 2 men with .22 rifles and flashlights And the kids know that they're in deep, dire trouble and nobody to help. The terror. What was the terror? What did they go through? And Loretta was raped, and those 2 kids are lying face down, shot execution style in the back of the head. And I can't put it together because I've met Patrick, and I know he's human. I know he's done something really terrible. But how do you put it together that, here's the grace of it, that basically human beings are worth more than one terrible act of our lives. We can never freeze frame any human being, no matter how terrible the act. So I got this on one side of me, and now I'm looking into the faces of these 2 beautiful kids who were killed by these very men, and a ripple of guilt going through me, like, what am I doing? I'm the spiritual advisor to the 2 people who killed these innocent kids. Then I think of the parents. And then I make a really big mistake. Because I remember thinking, and everybody was Catholic in this, those poor parents, I ought to go see them, I ought to try to do something. This is every parent's worst nightmare. The last time you talk to your kid alive is in the kitchen, and you're saying, wear that nice warm jacket I got you, son, so you'll be warm tonight. Or you might say something to your daughter about that the hem of her skirt is out, and those are the last words she ever hears from you. Or did you clean your room? Are your lessons done? Not knowing that this parting is going to be the final parting. And I'm thinking of those parents. And I'm thinking I ought to go see them. And then I'm holding back because I'm going, they're not going to want to see me. I'm the spiritual advisor to the 2 people who killed their children. And I'm scared. You know, I had a good editor, Jason Epstein. When I wrote Dead Man Walking and I did the first draft, I kind of downplayed not reaching out to the victims' families, saying I had never done anything like this before, and I was scared. And Jason says to me, good Jewish editor working with a Catholic nun on a book, well, Helen, it was cowardice, wasn't it? You were scared, weren't you, to go see those parents? I said, yeah, I was. He said, look, when you write your book, don't just talk about the peaks of the waves when you do it all right. Go through it with when you do it wrong, too. Take them in the troughs of the waves. Well, boy, did I. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't write a note to the parents. I didn't do anything. And I met them at the worst possible time you could meet a victim's family. It was at a pardon board hearing in Louisiana where everything couldn't be more polarized. And the way our culture approaches it is, if you care now about the victim's family, then you're going to be for the death penalty. And I'm going to use the image because there are 2 arms. There are 2 arms on that cross. And we belong to a culture that says, if you're for life and you respect life and you care about the victim's family, then you are going to be for the death of the one who did that to them, who plunged them in that suffering. And the pardon board hearing, sometimes we use different colored chairs. It couldn't be more polarized. You're going to be on this arm with the victims, or you're going to be on this arm with the perpetrator. And literally, that's what a pardon board hearing is. The victim's family was told to go and to bring all their friends and all their relatives and all their family because they want to stare down those 5 appointees by the governor like, don't you dare not give us our justice. And there might be 2, 3 people, as it was in the case of Patrick Sonnier, me, a lawyer, a psychiatrist, on the other side, to say to the pardon board, don't kill this man. And that was when I met the victims' families. They were furious at me. What was I doing there? How could they not see me as the enemy? And while the pardon board was voting, we were walking outside, and I bumped right into them. The girls' parents, the Borks, who had lost their daughter, met me right on the sidewalk in front of the building. And we couldn't avoid each other. And they just averted their gaze in silence. Actually, it was very respectful on their part. They didn't curse or scream at me, and they just walked past me. And right behind them were the other parents, the boys' parents, Lloyd LeBlanc and Eula LeBlanc, who had lost David. Their family name died with David. Lloyd and Eula were too old to have other children. When they buried their son, they buried their family name. And surprised by grace, human beings have ways of popping out of boxes. Have you ever noticed that? And they walk right up to me, and Lloyd LeBlanc said, Sister Helen, all this time you've been visiting those two brothers, and you didn't come see us? You can't believe the pressure we under with the death penalty. I said, well, I'm so sorry, Mr. LeBlanc. I didn't think you'd want to see me. What did he mean, pressure? Doesn't every victim's family, given the chance, want the death penalty? Because isn't that the ultimate justice? You suffer the ultimate loss, you get the ultimate punishment. Isn't that equal justice? They kill, they die, and then you will get to witness that, and that gives you your justice? Well, doesn't that make sense? What does he mean? He's under pressure. He said, Sister, I pray in this little chapel. Come pray with me. And you need to walk in our shoes. It's because of his graciousness. He could have been angry like the other parents. He could have just not wanted to have anything to do with me. He was the one who welcomed me in his graciousness. He's the hero of Dead Man Walking. I'm a storyteller, and I did some wrong things. And this man, and I went to pray with Lloyd LeBlanc. And it was Catholic. He kept vigil before the Blessed Sacrament from 4 to 5 in the morning on Friday mornings. We said the rosary together. And the rosary, the mysteries of the life of Christ on Friday, the day in which Jesus died, was the agony and passion and death of Jesus. And I'm kneeling alongside a man who's praying through the agony and passion and death of his only son. And it was this man who took me into his soul and shared that journey with me of coming to a place of forgiveness. Not in the beginning. I don't know any victim's family who start out, oh yeah, they killed this person, my loved one, and I forgive them. If people say that too quickly, you know they're short-circuiting something. Something's not. And as Lloyd and I, as we prayed together, and as he began to share his journey with me, he said, Sister, what I meant by pressure was all those people were saying to me, Lloyd, you got to be for the death penalty or look like you didn't love David. And here's Eula suffering. Here's my family suffering. How could I not be for the death penalty? And they were all saying that to me. But you see, that other part of me is that I'm a kind person. I love to help people. And I was veering away. There was a part of me that couldn't say yes to this thing of now the state's going to kill this man. Well, what about his mother? And my first clue to the soul of Lloyd LeBlanc as we were kneeling down praying was he not only prayed for his family and the Bourques and the safety of all teenagers, but he was praying for Gladys Saunier, the mother of Pat and Eddie that lived in this town and couldn't even go to the grocery store. Because she'd overhear people saying, there she is, that white trash woman, her sons are the ones that killed the Bourque and the LeBlanc kids. And people are cutting up dead animals and they're throwing them on her front porch. How do you legalize the hatred of a person and that they're going to be killed, but say, don't do that to the mama now, don't hate the mama, don't hate his brothers and sisters in the town, like you can take a big drop of red dye and drop it in a bowl of water and it's not going to spread. And here's Lloyd LeBlanc praying for Gladys Saunier. And when he took me through it, he said, Sister, so all those people were saying that to me, that I got to be for the death penalty, or it looked like I didn't love David, and I went there. I said, they're right. I wish I could pull the switch myself. I want to see him die. I wish both of them had gotten the death penalty, but we can get one of them. And I don't care about his mother. I don't care about anything. He killed, he should be killed. And then he said, but I didn't like the way that made me feel inside, because I had all those feelings of hatred and bitterness coming up inside me. And then finally I was praying. I was praying so hard, Jesus, help me in this. And then he said, I came to the place. And I just said, They killed our son, but I'm not going to let them kill me. I'm going to do what Jesus said. And he set his face to go down the road of forgiveness. Lord LeBlanc was the first person to teach me that what forgiveness is, first and foremost, is not something we do for somebody else to lift their burden of guilt. It was saving his own life. It was staying true to the integrity of who he was. Because he said, sister, I love to help people. I'm a kind person. I learned it from my mom and daddy. I just got to be true to who I am. And I wasn't going to let them take that away from me with that hatred and that bitterness. And Lord LeBlanc was the first victim's family I met who taught me that. And later, over these years, I have met human beings. We have them. In the letter to the Hebrews, it talks about a cloud of witnesses. We have them. In this state, part of what's going to shut down the death penalty in this state are victims' families saying, don't kill for us. Think of it. Think of what it means to say you have on an average 20 years wait before a person's executed. The cruelty of saying to a family, now we're going to get justice for you. And justice only means one thing. I've been to death penalty trials. I've heard the language of prosecutors saying to the jury, look at that family sitting over there. They're never going to see their daughter graduate from college. They're never going to see their grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, stiffen your spine and do justice for those people. And what is justice? Their loved one was killed. Only his death will do. Anything less than death is not fair, and it dishonors the victim's family. Does it? Does it? Think of it. I've been in the killing chamber in Texas. There are 3 witnessing chambers. There's in the well, in the middle is the gurney. Over to the right are the witnesses for the state. Usually it's 12 that are summoned for an execution and to sign afterwards that they witnessed this for the state. Over to the left, up above a bit, is where the victim's family sends a representative to watch. And then over in the other place, through a window, looks down on the gurney where you can see the face of the one being executed, and that is where mothers have stood with their hands against that glass as Texas kills their child. Where are we when what we do to try to heal is to imitate the killing and tell families they can witness that and that is going to give them closure or healing or justice? What happens to them? And that's why it's no secret that when New Jersey did away with the death penalty 4 years ago, 62 murder victims' families appeared before that legislature and said, don't kill for us. You're only going to re-traumatize us. You're going to give us this illusory hope that if we wait 10, 15, 20 years, that we'll get to send a representative and watch as you kill the one who killed our loved one, and that is supposed to heal us. In the Gospels, when they talk about the crucifixion of Jesus, that the writing of the actual death of Jesus is very simple. It's barely a sentence, and they crucified him there. What does it mean for us to be a people of life, to think that we can heal ourselves by imitating the killing? Through Patrick, I was brought. He was the first. And then over to the victim's family through Lloyd LeBlanc. And then I began to go to victims' family support groups, and I got my second shock. My first shock was looking into the face of this man that I knew was a killer, because I expected him to look like a killer. I thought if you murder somebody, you got to be different. These are the worst of the worst. And my second shock in going to the murder victim support groups was how many people, as you went around the room, said, everybody stays away from us. They don't know what to do with our pain, and so they stay away. What if we, living the gospel of Jesus, being Jesus in the world today, if we in every faith community reached out on both arms of this cross to the victim's family, to have a faith community around them in accompaniment in healing, and on the other arm of the cross to the perpetrator who has a mother, who has a family, and accompanying them that they too are a child of God. Everybody is worth more than the worst thing we've ever done. And what happens to us as a people is we're so removed from all of this, and then when there's been a terrible crime, we just say, well, automatic, that's what deserves the death penalty. But there's no way we're close to any of this or can see what it means. To be in that death house, as I've been now 6 times, to have some guards come up to me in the last hours of waiting, whispering to me, sister, I really don't want to be part of this, but I got a job. It's part of the job. Another guard who said to me, sister, the man we're killing tonight is a very different man from that young brash animal that came through the doors of this prison 16 years ago, cursing everybody. And now he's changed. He's become a decent human being, and we got to kill him anyway. Because death, it has nothing to do with redemption. Doesn't matter how much you change. It's about you killed, you die. I had no idea how selective the whole thing was. Because we hear about cases, I didn't know it's less than 1% of all the people who kill other human beings, homicides in this country every year, less than 1%. And every one selected is always poor. And 8 out of every 10 of people selected who are on your death row right now, it's because they kill white people. Almost never when people of color are killed. Unless that person's a policeman. Over 50% of the homicides in this country, a lot of them are black on black crime or Latino on Latino. The death penalty is never sought for them. You have to value the life of a victim. You have to be outraged over their death. Some deaths don't matter because some lives don't matter. I got a chance to have a direct dialogue with Pope John Paul. It's in the second book. It's out there, the story. And that was one of the things I said. I said, Your Holiness, does the Catholic Church only uphold dignity of the innocent? When I'm walking with a man to execution and he's shackled hand and foot, he's made completely defenseless. And this was Patrick Saunier I was referring to. And he says, Sister, just pray God holds up my legs. There is no dignity in this death. Do we only uphold the dignity of the innocent? What about the guilty? And I said for any country, for any government to take on itself that it's going to be the arbiter of life or death and be able to decide which of its citizens is going to be sent into eternity, wouldn't we have to be so pure and so good as a society that no racism will enter into it, that if you're a black person or a Latino or a white person and you're killed, we're equally as outraged over the death of our citizens? If you're a policeman or if you're a fireman or if you're a public health nurse, your life is equally valued. And we set up in these laundry lists this meritocracy of death. Well, if you're a policeman, you can get the death penalty, but not if you're a fireman. If you're a child, 12 years or younger, will go for the death penalty, but not if you're 14 years old. We don't have a way of doing this thing. We are all tainted by it, and we are all dragged down by it. And we are a good people. The American public that I've met over these 20 years, crisscrossing this nation, from Biloxi, Mississippi to San Diego, California. And when I talk to people and bring them there, you know what most people say? They say, oh, we didn't know it was like this. Because we have no idea how selective it is. We have no idea how it's applied. We just know, oh, well, that was a terrible crime. They deserve to die for that. Who deserves to kill them? It's us. And so in this dialogue with Pope John Paul, that happened through a man by the name of Joseph Odell. He's the second story in the book, The Death of Innocence, an innocent man in Virginia who was crying out the whole time he was on death row that he was innocent. And Virginia killed him anyway, and you could read the story for yourself. And I said, Your Holiness, we need you. We need you to firm up Catholic opposition to the death penalty. It's got so many loopholes in it now, the district attorneys in New Orleans are quoting it. We need to stand for life, the dignity of all life. We need you to do this. And he did. And the changes in the book about what he did in the catechism to change the criteria we'd used for 1,600 years, that for a grave or grievous crime, the government could take life, traditional teaching in most Christian churches, because we're all well aware that when Thomas Aquinas in the 12th century talked about that it was okay for the state to take life, there were no prisons. There were no ways to keep us safe. Actually, when California is going to end the death penalty, we are going to be safer in California. Because all those unsolved homicides, all the unsolved rapes, we're going to be able to put more into law enforcement to actually help keep people safe and not pour the millions and millions into this political symbol, which is what it is. It's just the easy way where people say, I'm tough on crime, and they put us through this whole thing of this an eventual killing of real human beings, but it's got nothing to do with making us safe. When Pope John Paul made the change in the catechism, in 97, he came to St. Louis in 99. He had never in the same breath held out the death penalty as a pro-life issue. And the beauty of being a Catholic is that we are for life across the board. We are for life. From the time of the beginning of life till somebody with Alzheimer's on the other end who maybe doesn't even know their name. And the Pope stood up in St. Louis and he said, no to abortion, no to euthanasia, no to physician-assisted suicide, and no to the death penalty, which is cruel. He acknowledges the torture of it. Our Supreme Court can't. It's cruel and it's unnecessary. And as he had said in the Gospel of Life, Evangelium Vitae, we have prisons. We have a way to be safe. That's why the majority of nations, of the United Nations, no longer have the death penalty. Because we have a way to keep society safe. Life without parole is real for people who don't get the death penalty. And we're going to have to go our way along that road, too, toward life. And California is one of the states that sentences young people to prison for the rest of their lives, to die in prison. We got to change that, too, because that's against life. And the Pope added in St. Louis, even those among us who have done a terrible crime have a dignity that must not be taken from them. And what makes the essence of the act of the death penalty an act of cruelty is the persons rendered utterly defenseless and taken out and killed. And to defend ourselves as a society, we don't have to take life anymore. We don't want to take life. Juries go through this whole thing of having this responsibility put into their hands. Ordinary folks like us. Am I going to walk out of this room having decided to put a human being to death because they know that it takes a unanimous decision, and if any juror holds off and doesn't vote for death, each has that person's life in their hands, because if they refrain from voting for death, the person lives. What happens to them afterwards? Who's tracking all the collateral damage of the killing that we've been doing, over 1,200 executions, of what happens to the jurors who made the decision behind the closed doors? What happens to the guards who practice, who are trained when the person goes peacefully and when they fight him every inch of the way? It's happened to Lewis Williams in Ohio, where he was calm the day before. The guards who have to do the killing for us, he looked like he was calm. He was reading his Bible till they went to get him out of his cell, and he grabbed the bars like his fingers were welded to those bars, and is looking in the eyes of the guards and saying, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Oh God, you are my witness. Oh God, I'm innocent. Don't let them kill me." And none of those guards could participate in another execution. Where are we when it happens? And here's what happened to me. After Patrick was killed, in the early morning hours, right after midnight in Louisiana, in the dark, I came out. The sisters were there. They put a coat around me. God bless the sisterhood. I mean, we have the women religious in this country. We have always been in service and hands of the church. We never wear the plumes in liturgical processions. We're the hands. And our sisters, my sisters, put a coat around me. And we started the car going down this Highway 66, because our prison Angola is at a dead end at the end of the road, and they had to stop the car because I had to throw up. And then I remember thinking, clear as a bell, the call. The people are never going to get close to this. You're never going to see this. I was brought in as a witness. I got to tell the story. And I began. To small little audiences in the beginning. There was no book. There was no movie. I remember the smallest audience ever. It was at St. Christopher Nursing Home in New Orleans. It was right after lunch, and they made an announcement. Who wants to hear the death penalty? None. Go to Parlor A. And these 3 people came, and I started talking, and in 10 minutes, 2 of them were gone. I mean, gone. And this one lady was listening, and I was saying, "Lady, don't leave me. You're it." And I began to tell the story. I have to do this because I've been brought in as a witness, and I come before you today. And when we leave this place, it tables. It is this initiative to end California's death penalty, and it's going to have to be the people doing it. We got to get 504,000 signatures minimally to bring this to a ballot initiative in 2012. And it's called SAFE because it's about the savings of the millions of dollars. It's about accountability and full enforcement. So SAFE, SAFE. And we need your signature. And we need you taking these petitions and getting them filled out. We've already got 90,000 signatures in the petition thing over the first couple of weeks. It's going to happen. All the polls show that people given a choice between life without parole or state killing want life, but we got to make it happen, and we got to get those petitions filled out. And if you have never put your precious signature on any document that puts you on the side of working for life and against state killing, I urge you today to do that. And then the young people, college age, that aren't registered to vote, we got room here for you today to register to vote, to be participating citizens for a culture of life. Can we do it? Are we ready? Can we do it? Yes. Thank you. Margie, do we have time for a little conversation? Good. Okay, we got the microphone. Just raise your hand. Margie will bring you the microphone. Question or comment?
Sister, I probably know better than ask you these questions because you're more than a match for probably everybody in this room. But two situations. The horrific murder cases in the past where you have murders over a period of years with a great number of deaths where the convicted person is continuing to blabber on about why they did it, their purpose, and they're either insane or not. And also, how you feel about those situations. And the also is the argument that deterrence of the death penalty will deter other murders. What is your view on deterrence?
Thank you. Two excellent questions. First of all, you had the Green River Killer in Washington State who killed maybe 90 women. He could show where the bodies were for 48. He didn't get the death penalty because it was more important for them to get information about where the victims were buried. There are some crimes that are so horrendous, we hardly have a category for it. Serial killers. We have Derek Todd Lee on death row. He killed, 8 women. But it's not about them. It's about us. Because who's going to kill them now? People do horrific crimes that are beyond words for us. But we have to keep our eye on the prize. The death penalty is about us. A number of people are mentally ill who kill people. And so the first role of a prison is classification of prisoners and to keep people safe within the prison. We have a way of doing this. So no matter what we try to say in terms of, isn't there anybody out there that we can kill? Look at what they did. Look at Timothy McVeigh, he killed 168. Well, what about somebody who kills somebody's mother and the universe is lost? The numbers, the quantity of murders finally just blurs the picture because you come to one human life. It's about us. It's about how we're going to respond as a society. Because whenever we say, well, this we call the worst of the worst, so what we must do then is to kill them. If we're not doing it for the defense of society, why are we doing it? Because they killed, so we kill them? Because they deserve it? And then we make ourselves have to be the decision makers about, well, you do it for 168, as in Oklahoma City, but not for 4, not for 2, not for 1. I just simply want to say to us, we can't handle it. We're not the givers of life, and we're not the ones to be deciding who can die and who can't, and who deserves to die, and why they have to die. And besides, this thing is so broken. We now have 138 wrongfully convicted people in this system who have been exonerated off a death row, say, by college volunteers. And then the other thing about deterrence, we've been at it, 30 years? Just look at the track record. The states that do the death penalty the most, roughly, have double the homicide rate of states that don't. It's not about deterrence. There are 2 polls done with police chiefs in the United States, and they each given a list of 10 remedies, and they all put the death penalty last. And the way they put it was the people doing the thinking and the people doing the killing are 2 separate sets of people. They said when people murder, when they kill, they don't even think they're going to get caught, much less, oh, I don't know if I should do this, like they have studied Ignatian discernment and weighed the pros and cons. Well, maybe I might get the death penalty, but then on the other hand, there's life without parole. Should I do it? They're not thinking. One time, the warden at the Louisiana State Penitentiary told me, sister, you know who makes the best trustees in this prison? I said, who? He said, people in for murder. Most people who murder don't know when they get up that morning they're going to murder somebody. They're in a situation, bang, bang, bang. And then you're up for a murder trial, and then you're in prison. Consequences. If you're not thinking about consequences, and a lot of those situations in which people commit murder are not thinking about consequences. We could boil people in oil in the public square, and if you're not thinking about consequences, it doesn't matter. And all you got to do is look at the track record of the practice of the death penalty across the United States. Texas, that does the most, look at the violence in their cities. It's got nothing to do with deterrence. And morally, we'd want to look at that anyway, wouldn't we? That we should make an example of this person and kill them, that maybe by killing them, we can give an example out there to other people. Can you ever use a human life like that and take their life as an example to others? Okay, another question or comment? Is what you're giving out, is this stuff for the California petition drive? Good. Thank you. Okay, another question.
It would seem that you spend a lot of energy on the lives of very few men and women who are actually put to death. You spend your whole life, it seems like, championing them, but I don't really think that's what you're doing. So I want you to make it so clear for us that your reaction when you pulled over the car, threw up, it was a toxicness that was in you. And it seems to me that what you're telling us is that there's a toxicness in our society that's above and beyond just getting justice, but that we don't know how much toxin this creates in our life, and therefore shuts down our relationships with each other, or shuts down our ability to be compassionate. I guess I'm not satisfied with hearing about sort of our day-to-day reasons why we would be against it or for the death penalty. I want to know what God really is doing in us when we want the death penalty, when we want that carnal justice.
That toxicity, that's a great, great word, like secondhand smoke. What happens to us as a society by having these deaths happen in our names? I mean, you hit the soul of the whole thing by asking that question, because it is about us. We could say, well, it really doesn't affect me. I mean, I'm far away from this. Yeah, I think they ought to die. It's only going to be a few of them. And what happens to us? And that really is the heart of the country of this. Because to be a people of life means that we care about what is done in our name, and that we can't be neutral in this. That if we're not standing up in some kind of resistance to what's being done, we're part of the status quo, and this is being done in our name. That was one of the things I learned from Maria Agustinillo, too, because I used to say, I'm spiritual, I'm not political, I'm above the political stuff. And there's no way in a democracy to be above the political stuff. And policies that take life in such an intentional way, in this protocol of death, none of us are neutral or removed from that. And it's toxicity for all of us because it poisons something in us. There's a kind of lack of regard for life that happens in us as a society. Now, what I've found, and when I'm in Europe, people will ask, what is it about people of the United States and your desire for vengeance that makes the people so wedded to the death penalty? And now I really know how to answer that question. It's not that people are deeply wedded to the death penalty at all. Most of us have never reflected deeply about it. And that lack of consciousness, that lack of awareness, is the not being alive part of us. that the gospel or any spiritual tradition is about. And that connectivity, that when that man is killed, when that woman is killed, that is my brother and that is my sister, and we are all meant. And deep down at the deepest level, we are one. And when I cut out that part and say, well, they can be ripped out of the fabric of life, I have cut out a part of myself, and that callousness, that rigidity of soul, where we go, us and them, they die and we're all better for it, takes life away from us. Thank you for asking that question. Thank you.